Greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this video. Last time I talked about my favourite robot masters from each game, and now I'll be ranking each title in the classic series. The classic Mega Man titles have remained consistent in quality and play relatively the same, so my list will be coming down to my personal preference. Anyway, let's begin. I pretty much enjoy every classic game, with one exception. After the surprise success of Mega Man 2, Capcom immediately put Mega Man 3 into development. Unfortunately, around that time of its development, the creator of the Blue Bomber, Akira Kitamura, left the company, so the rest of the development was left to Masayoshi Kurokawa and Kenji Inafune, which led to a struggling development. This can be seen after when you beat the 8 Robot Masters, you have to tackle 4 remix stages, which includes the Nightmare, that are the Dark Robots, that uses the power of the Robot Masters from Mega Man 2, and the worst part, you have to fight them twice in each stage. The Dark Robots also hit that truck, and with their larger hitbox and how fast they walk compared to you, is a pain to avoid. If it wasn't for the rewind feature that appeared in the Odyssey collection, this would be the point I would stop playing. The Robot Masters are also some of my least favourite in the series, and the 2 power-ups, the Gemini Laser and the Top Spin, are utter worthless. The Gemini Laser can only be fired once, barely hits the opponents, and makes you defenseless as you have to wait for the laser to disappear. And with the Top Spin, besides being a weakness to the final boss, you would most likely... No, scratch that, you will hurt yourself. This game did introduce the adorable and reliable robotic god Russ, the mysterious Proto Man, and one of my favourite abilities, the Slide, which became a staple to the series, but unfortunately I won't be coming back to be playing Mega Man 3 anytime soon. Usually your first outing is your roughest, and this holds true to the first Mega Man game. This was the first game that Capcom designed with a home console in mind, as at the time they usually focused on arcade games and ports to those games. At the time, most games were played with a linear route in mind. However, Mega Man stood out from the rest, as you can tackle most levels in any order and uses the boss's weapons. However, being the first game in the series, there are a lot of issues, such as spikes that will instantly kill you, despite the fact you've already been hit by an enemy. The bosses in this game can be brutally punishing, with awkward patterns like Fireman and the Copper Robot, and Mega Man himself falls like he has Yeats' iron boots on. The Mender Beam is a great tool, however it is easily missable if you're playing this game for the first time and didn't beat Dutchman stage first, as you need it to progress the Wily Fortress. With only 6 Robot Masters instead of the standard 8, this is the shortest game in the series, especially if you know what you're doing. But despite its flaws, it built the foundation for the rest of the series, and it still holds up better than most NES games around that time of its release. During the WiiWare and PlayStation Network days, classic Mega Man came back after a long hiatus, and the one leading development were Inti Creates, who are known for the Zero and Azure Striker Gunvolt games. Inti Creates developed 2 classic games for Capcom, 9 and 10, and out of the 2, 10 is my least favourite. 10 is by no means a bad game. In fact, it's very fun, especially if you're playing as base who can fire in multiple directions, and can dash. But I feel some of the others weren't designed well for the Blue Bomber in mind, who doesn't have the slide or charge shot in this game. I found some of the others frustrating, such as Commander Man stage with the parachute bombs, and a ridiculous window of opportunity to pass through, combined with the sandstorm that presses the player. There's also Chill Man stage, which has breakable platforms, and that these annoying enemies can also break. Besides the triple blade and the water shield, I didn't really use any of the powers, unless if it was for a boss's weakness, or to get an E-Tank. I don't play these days for the story, but I like the concept of Robo Enza, which in Euro could be the precursor to the Zero virus in the X games. And 10 does have a lot of content with 3 playable characters, multiple difficulty options, and extra optional stages, but I feel the rest of these games are better. The majority of classic titles have remained the same in how they play, and don't stray off the core path. I think this is why Mega Man 8 is considered the black sheep of the franchise, as it changes a lot of its core elements, like removing E-Tanks, which makes certain bosses like the Wily Castle 1 boss more difficult, and the removal of the Rust Coil and Jet, which were replaced with the Rust Bike that I never used. Half of 8's levels have certain gimmicks, which ranges from fun, like the Rail Shooter sections in Kingdom Man stage, to mediocre, like the snowboarding sections in Frostman stage, to a drag like Astroman's maze gimmick. There are still great levels to behold, like Grenade Man's and Swordman stage, and I found myself using the power-ups more than the majority of the other titles, and not just using my standard Meta Buster. This is a stunning good-looking game too, with excellent FMV animations, character sprites, and lush backgrounds. Capcom knew how to make visually pleasing games in the late 90s. The voice acting is atrocious, but this came out during the time where most video games with voice acting was bad. And besides, I find it funny and makes the experience more enjoyable. Dr. Light sounds drunk in every scene he is in, and I love it. Despite some flaws, I have to give credit to the development team for trying something new. The rest of the NES library was hard to put in order, as the quality and enjoyment was nearly identical. In fact, as of writing this script, I spent a good few days deciding and played the rest of the NES games back to back again for comparison. If I had to decide which one I liked the least, it would have to be Mega Man 5. I like the Robot Master designs and the stages in which you fight them. However, besides the Power Stone and the Gyro Attack, I hardly used any of the robot powers. Rust Oil got neutered, as Mega Man has to jump when Rust jumps, instead of just bouncing on the spring like the rest of the titles. And I didn't really find the Super Arrow to be useful. Thankfully, the Rust Oil returned to its original form in the later titles. You do a lot beat if you search for the letters found in each stage, rewarding those who like exploring. No, a lot of them were in plain sight. Beat also makes the Wily Capsule a total pushover. Like Mega Man 8, the stages have their own unique gimmicks. But unlike 8 where it works sometimes, 5's gimmicks are enjoyable without stepping out of the core gameplay. Starman stage has main physics, Gravity Man changes the gravity without being a nuisance, and Wave Man stage has a fun jet ski section that really presses the NES. My introduction to the Mega Man franchise as a whole started with X4 on PC, when I was about 8 to 9 years old, but I didn't replay any of the classic titles until I started watching Stereotypes videos back in the 2000s. And then with the announcement of Mega Man 9, I decided to download Mega Man 2 on the Wii Virtual Console, as I heard that 2 was considered the best one. Mega Man 2 was a passion project for many of the developers at Capcom, as while the original game didn't sell well, the publishers allowed them to work on a sequel in their spare time. This turned into one of the most critically acclaimed titles on the NES, as well as spawned Mega Man into one of Capcom's best-selling and celebrated IPs. In fact, it was the only Mega Man game to appear on the NES Classics. The soundtrack is the most recognizable in the series, and is basically drilled in my head for the last decade. Tracks like Woodman, Crestman, and Dr. Wily Stage 1 have a certain rhythm to them that they have a lasting presence. This is a step up from its predecessor with better designed levels, but it does fall flat in some areas, such as Heatman's ridiculous disappearing block sections that you should not tackle until you get item 2, and the Booby Trap boss that can only be defeated with the Crash Bomber that requires limited mistakes. I would say the list of powers are good, but they're overshadowed by the Metal Blade, which can wreck the majority of enemies, as well as 3 out of the 8 Robot Masters, making the game one of the easiest in the series, even on the harder difficulty. Despite its balancing issue, I adore the Metal Blade for its ridiculous strength and how fun it is to destroy everything in your path. I would say this is one of the best games to start off with, but I wouldn't recommend it for people who suffer from epilepsy due to a lot of black and white lights that appear in some of the bosses. After 6 games, Classic Mega Man finally entered the Super Nintendo in 1995 with Mega Man 7. For a while, I kept hearing people saying 7 was one of the worst games in the series, but since I played it on the Odyssey collection, I'm honestly baffled, as it plays like a gem. The CX powers, while not the strongest in the list, are used to change the effects of the stages, like using the freeze tracker to freeze the lava in Jumpman stage, and using the Stork's Wheel to burn down the forest in Siasman stage, which leads to alternate routes, discovering many items like Beat and the Energy Balancer. If you're not the explorative type, these items can be bought in the shop later on in the game that would cost more. I do like this method that is catered to both kinds of players, the ones who want to explore and discover, and the casuals who just want to trotty on the game. 7 also includes my favourite feature, the Super Adapter, which is unlocked once you clear all the rust letters in the first 4 stages. This is a combination of the jet and power abilities from Mega Man 6, which allows our hero to double jump as well as firing a rocket punch. This game is so much fun to play through until the very last stretch, as the Wily capsule is unforgivingly difficult, as his attacks are hard to avoid, he takes ages to beat, and his weakness, the Wild Coil, is just as difficult as touching him normally. According to the Mega Man official complete works, he was intended to be insanely hard, and that they created something that cannot be defeated without the use of an energy tank. I rather suggest bringing all your energy tanks in before the final conflict. If it wasn't for the Wily capsule, this would have been easy in the top 3 with its colourful visuals, soundtrack, the Super Adapter, and level design. The first 3 titles had some issue, mostly with the boss designs. It wasn't until Mega Man 4 where the game was enjoyable from beginning to end. Out of all the NES games, 4 has my favourite OST with jamming tracks like Dive Man and Soul Man stage, as well as the power-up jingle. It feels that the team have practiced making more complex scores with the sound limitations of the NES. Unlike Mega Man 3's Start Robot sections, the Cossack stages are better paced with enjoyable levels rather than a rush segment. Mega Man 4 also debuted the Tour Slot and introduced some neat toys such as the balloon, which acts as item 1 for Mega Man 2, and the wire, which pulls the Blue Bomber to find new goodies. I enjoyed the majority of power-ups, from the Stream Newt Rainfluss to the Pharaoh Slot, which can be charged and can be thrown diagonally. There isn't much to say without feeling redundant, but Mega Man 4 is a darn good game, and one I can recommend to start off with. Mega Man 6 is my overall favourite game out of the NES titles. It has my favourite NES lineup of Robot Masters, as each Robot Master is themed after different countries, such as Windman representing China, Blizzardman representing Canada, and Flameman representing Saudi Arabia. You do have your typical ice and water stages, but it does have some visually pleasing stages that pushes the NES to its possible limit. I love this sunset scene in Tomahawk Man's stage. 6 also has some decent weapons, like the Silver Tomahawk and the Night Crosser. However, the real meat is from the jack and power adapters that are used to find alternate routes, giving the game some replay value and is catered towards the more explorative types of players. You occasionally just find health and energy pickups, but if you beat the Robot Masters in a different pathway, you will not beat. Like 4, Mega Man 6 is one of the more balanced games in the series, and one I had fun from beginning to end. While Mega Man 2 was my gateway to the classic series, it wasn't until I played Mega Man 9 on WiiWare that I became a fan of the series, and for a while this was my favourite classic Mega Man game. Although the removal of the slide and charge art did bother me in Mega Man 10, I thought the levels in 9 was designed with these limitations, plus the strong and diverse reaction of powers easily makes up for it. The laser trident destroys most enemies and even pierces through shields. The Hornet Taser is a homing weapon and can grab items from afar, and the dual satellite protects its wielder from incoming foes and projectiles, and lasts a good while without needing to activate it again. My favourite, the Black Hole Bomb, can destroy most common enemies and deal a ton of damages to bosses. For a while, Mega Man 9 was one of my favourite video game soundtracks of all time, with my favourites being Splash Woman stage, titled Splash Blue, and the first 2 Dr. Wily tracks, A Flash in the Dark and Where the Robots. Like Mega Man 10, this game was also developed by NT Creates, which I believed had some influence on the narrative, which revolved around robots' expiration dates and for them to have a purpose. I don't play these games for the plot, but I do like the reason why you have to fight the robots this time. With 10 games already mentioned, you probably already know what the number 1 spot is, and that happens to be the latest game, Mega Man 11. After Kenji Inafune left Capcom, the future of the Blue Bomber was looking bleak. But thanks to many people, including its director, Koji Oda, known for directing Resident Evil 0 and the recent Strider game, Mega Man 11 became a reality, and boy did it turn out well. The music for the game was composed by Marita Suzuki, who has helped contribute to compose music for games like Mega Man Star Force 2, Sengoku Basara, and Dead Rising. But this game was her first role as lead composer. The score is pretty good, and Suzuki nailed the Mega Man feel for the modern era, with my favourite track, Fuse Man's theme, being a total jam to listen to. The voice acting in 11 now feels like it had some direction and production to it, with the performers giving more life to the characters. While Mega Man 9 had my favourite weapon, the Black Hole Bomb, 11 has a stronger range of weapons, and with the inclusion of the Power Gear, that helped boost weapons like the Chain Blast and Thunderstorm. Speaking of gears, the introduction of the Speed and Power Gears freshes the gameplay up without feeling gimmicky or overpowered, as the game is still challenging. The Speed Gear goes into beautiful zone mode, making moving obstacles and enemies slow, allowing our hero to tackle challenges in different ways. 11 also brings back the charge shot and slide 2 that were unfortunately absent in 9 and 10. I would love if the double gear system returns for future installments, and I hope that Mega Man games will still continue and evolve.